Our educational system of today is highly advanced, isn't it? We're doing the best we can for all the students entered into our schools, aren't we? Every step forward, we're bettering our educational system, right? These are the questions that I hope you will at least begin to consider more after listening to this TED Talk. The direction in which education starts a man will determine his future in life. From Plato. For hundreds upon hundreds of years, it has been shown that education has remained and continues to be a guiding light into the darkness of our everyday lives. It is without arguing what sets your life into its own direction, and with that is tremendously important and irreplaceable. It has been shown through the study of historical texts and anthropology that the value in education has barely changed in thousands of years. It's simple. The more you know and the more you're aware of, the better you will do in life. What changes is the delivery of education to the forever changing types of people and number of people who are looking for it. Though every advancement in education of our peers is looked upon as just that, an advancement, by the end of this presentation, I hope you'll be asking yourself, does the educational system of today supersede that of the ancient Romans, who existed during the time when the years was still in the hundreds? They had an educational system that heavily prepared the children entered into it for the lives that they would live when they finished their formal education. Ask yourself, what's the purpose of school? If I were to hold a survey, I'm sure an overwhelming amount would reply with groans and complaints about how school today contributes no real value to their lives. And I frankly would have to agree. Too often are students bombarded with formulas and definitions that even the hardest working adults do not have to encounter in their lives, and it begs the ever-growing, important question of, why am I still in school? Even the type A students of our grade are going to find themselves unequipped for the tricky task of being an adult, but they will be able to graph functions of inequalities while solving that problem both graphically and algebraically. Romans approach their schooling much differently. Today, the purpose of school seems to be to show the attendee what is out there, and stresses a variety of options for classes and lessons on topics that many will never encounter after the completion of the course. The variations of school and education in ancient Rome were plentiful. Preparation for life and the child would live was stressed. Most boys, and most of the girls as well, would have some sort of formal schooling from the ages of 6, 7 to around 11 or 12. For the masses, a school was run by the Magister Ludi, or the town school teacher. At this level of education, one could expect a thorough learning of the alphabet, reading, writing, and very basic arithmetic. Secondary schools, though rare, did exist in larger cities such as Rome and Sicily. Heavier emphasis was put on language, both the composition of their own and that of Greek. For the politically bound, a third level of schooling was available. Rhetoric, the art of speaking, was a must for any serious candidate to be. Public speaking was placed very highly in ancient Rome and therefore was at the highest level of education. In the simplest words, those who were destined to live to be nothing more than a farmer either did not go to school or had only a very basic local instruction. That is because that is what that particular student needed to live a successful life within his means and within his time period. This example of a child was that of a plebeian. His society saw him as what he was, nothing more than a farmer. Someone who was a member of the equestrian class or the nobiles and patricians had a much greater chance of attending the secondary schools outlined above. This is due to the simple fact that they would do more and were bound for things requiring more education. These were the bankers, moneylenders, and business owners of ancient Rome. It only makes sense that they should be exposed to a little more than your average plebe who would do nothing more than farm for all of his life. For those of the patrician class who were destined for the political lifestyle, there were rhetoric schools run by supposed masters of rhetoric. These were closer to an apprentice-master relationship, rather than the basic school setting that we're all used to. This is where many of the consuls of Rome had gotten their final step in their education, preparing them to begin their courses in Rome. Agree or disagree, during this time period, a women's profession was homemaking, which is taking care of the household and their family. Typically, after receiving the basic local instruction, they would study or observe their mothers and would learn to be a mother and a wife, both of which they would be in their late teens. The idea of bettering oneself was a very, very new concept to the Romans. The idea that one man could be extremely successful simply because he worked extremely hard, no matter what class he was born into, was very alien. Though the fact of this is obviously shown in our society. If you're poor, you can still go on to do great things, whereas in Rome, that wasn't the case. A man knew his life, or rather, his life was known for him, seemingly preordained, from the time he was a child, and the Romans saw it foolish to give a standardized education to all of their citizens. It is foolish to force a certain level of instruction upon children who will not make use of it and do not want to be taught. I'm sure everyone has encountered this situation where they're in a class and there's one kid, he just does not want to learn the material. And the teacher tries and tries, and there's nothing you can do. It's a waste of everyone's time and the resources. The Romans were a well-oiled machine, and the education of their citizens were left up to the man, woman, or family of the attendee, as it should be. We as humans have evolved. Far less stress is placed upon children. A very good thing, right? In life, the answer is yes, but the answer is not so clear-cut in educational terms. A rigid, rigorous curriculum is not placed as highly as an environment where students can choose what they learn, when they learn it, and how they want to be taught. More options are given to the students than were back then. In Roman times, there was a set way to learn things and serious repercussions for mistakes made. These can include being beaten with sticks or held down by slaves and beat. Fear motivated the children to err from the path of the schoolmaster less. This gives a glimpse into the rigid system in which education flourished, and it begs the question of, is where we're going in the education of our children the correct path? Well, at least in ancient Rome, there were never questions of children being unprepared for the lives they would live. Responsibility is a key lesson that is slowly being taken away from the students of any age in our current system. In Roman culture, school was a privilege for the relatively well-off, and even though many of those parents were not easily able to afford the education, the students showed their parents that they deserved to go to school. They had to prove that they were worthy of being taught and knowing more. If one wanted to go to school, they would have to make that apparent to their family and to their teacher. Responsibility in proving oneself was required in even the most basic of lessons. Students, when learning the alphabet, Latin, or both Latin and Greek, had to prove to their magister ludi that they were practiced and well-disciplined enough to deserve his trust on writing with paper skulls. To do this, they used tabules, which were wooden or stone frames filled with wax. Today, schooling is a right to all children in America. Our mantra of "No child left behind" does tremendous work in allowing children to get the education they deserve. Learning and education in our society, mainly due to that fact, has become much more slack. The entitled attitude of students make them less apt to learn and gain knowledge. In Rome, wrong answers or lack of participation in class was met with physical punishment, whereas today there are little to no consequences in doing poorly at school. There is an abundant amount of safety nets in our system today, things to catch students and make them feel as though doing poorly in school was alright. A safety net is similar to hand-holding, necessary in younger age, but should soon fall out of use. In today's world, safety nets are accumulating more and more in our school system, and the extra help they provide are going to affect the child's work ethic and their outcome later in life. The Romans saw this issue, and they were quick to put responsibility onto the child when necessary. Today, entire websites, podcasts, and series of books are dedicated to help students feeling overwhelmed by the number of courses. Typically, this is in college, but many other high schools offer tons and tons of electives and give simply too many choices. This quite clearly demonstrates how school has become overcomplicated. We as a society are straying away from the true purpose of school, to prepare and teach future generations and give skills that are going to be needed later in life. The Roman system of education determined duration of school proportionate to the job and life the student would likely live, have, or aspire to in their future. This streamlined schooling and aptly prepared children better than the current system of schooling today.